Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. I'm Glenn Keller, and in this video we're going to be talking a little bit more about visualization data inside of the Active Workspace Client. So far in this segment we have been kind of cooking through the Active Workspace interface, learning about the different nuances, bells and whistles, options that you have for interacting with data. And in this video, though we have looked at visualization data in the past, we are going to dive deeper into that viz data to give you a little bit more information about how you could work with it effectively in Active Workspace. So first of all, visualization data in the system, if I do a search, is associated to an item revision for the most part. And you'll see under the attachments, visualization data is going to be made up of what's called a direct model dataset. And the way that this works in the background is essentially when you request the data, the system knows it's this type of data and spins up a process in the background that will then allow you to visualize it. Now, typically this is created from CAD data, which you see on the left-hand side. And CAD data is saved in from NX or CATIA or SolidWorks or whatever be the case. And during that save process, the systems will sync and it will create this compressed CAD geometry. Now, you don't really care which one's which for the most part inside of Active Workspace. When you click the 3D tab when viewing something that has data associated to it, as long as your administrators have set up the 3D support, you should see the data and be able to spin and interact with it. Now, in here, if you're looking at it in this view, which is kind of a search results view, you're going to get this one component. You're not going to be able to expand the assembly or individually select. You're just going to get the composition of all the JTs overlaid onto each other. And the position that they have in space against the origin is going to be relative to how you saved it in from the CAD system. However, you do get a bunch of options across the top. So you get a gallery option, which if you open it up, you can take captures with different markups on them. And you can say capture image and then give it a name and add it to the list of captures. So I can come in here and I can click add. And then if I add it, it will refresh and actually capture that. I did it a couple of times, so you'll see that that's going to be kind of refreshing there. If I come into select area and I do a selection in this view of something like this, then in that select area, it's going to essentially do a search in that area for anything that's completely within the area. And it'll highlight those components as a part of the assembly. I could do a volume select. So if I come over here, and select this one, then I could pick something in the system, and as long as it refreshes and updates, you're going to get the volume of the selected component. Now, I can also open the component, and if it is an assembly, then I'll get the assembly view that you see here, and I can switch to 3D and interact with that 3D data in this way. So it'll give you a progress bar across the top if you are loading a lot of data. The difference between loading it there and actually rendering it, there is a difference. So pay attention to what you have selected. And remember, you can toggle on and off the top level assembly set to kind of fine tune and only work with a sub-assembly. So in here, I've got this component selected. It's a smaller subset of data, so I'll get a little bit better performance on this training box. And then in here, I can select between standard views. So top, bottom, left, right, ISO, and negative ISO. So I can switch, and then maybe I want ISO. I can switch. Visibility controls, you can show all, you can hide all, auto select what you want depending on what you have selected. You can clean the 3D view and turn everything off. So think of these as kind of like the buttons on the left sides of the elements. So if I show all, it'll turn them all back on, and you'll see the buttons correlate to that on the left-hand side. So everything's updating now, and it's loading all the additional geometry into the view. Transparency, at the moment I have something selected, so you can see it's highlighted, but if you disable transparency, not only will you get a little bit better performance because it's not trying to ghost out the other images, you'll see a little bit better performance. You just won't be able to isolate those selections as easily. Fit is going to do similar to what you're used to. So if I click fit, it'll fit it to the window, just kind of center based on what I have selected. At the moment, that's this bottom piece, and that's why it did that. If I control select the component in the assembly, now I don't have anything selected. And if I choose fit, it will fit to the center of the entire assembly. I also have my standard rotate, pan, and zooms, and then my measure options, and we'll get into viewer options here in a moment. If I choose measure, notice I have parts, surfaces, edges, points, surfaces, arc centers. I can basically select any of these if they're toggled. If I turn them off, I can get a little bit more specific, so maybe I only want to measure this surface here. If I select that, then I should get some dimensions based on that selection. If I do edges, you can see how it highlights an edge and then another edge. And based on that, I can get different dimensions. So there you go. So I've got my dimension, and then once the dimension's on the screen, and I move it over, I can adjust where that dimension lives. I can rotate it. And interact with it. I can also delete the dimension once it's there. So I can say all. And in this case, I'm deleting everything I had built. And you can see it's going back. I can also see things like geometric information on the object. I can create sections, like creating a cross section of the component as a whole, depending on what I want to select. So working with 3D data, and you can see here the section has applied. Working with 3D data allows you a lot of control in measuring, interacting with the component, viewing assembly of data, as well as going in and seeing specific pieces of information. With regards to things like measuring and editing sections, you get a lot of options for controlling the section and the geometry that is showing on the screen. Just pay attention to things like what configuration of the assembly you're looking at, like your revision rules, and pay attention to things like orientation and offsets when you're doing things like measuring and working with sectioning.